10:03, I will call the meeting to order. The chair notes there's a quorum present and we'll do the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to 2.0, which is additions and revisions to the agenda. The one thing that I would like to add to that is consider approval of replat of Block 66, Lancasters addition, Ballfield subdivision. Did you guys?
Yeah.
You guys got that. Okay. This is basically just a administrative thing that we need to do in order to allow the city's Ballfield development housing project to go forward. So requires our signature by law. So who would have thought? That's
And it is in Ellen's office. It needs to be signed in
Oh, okay.
Ellen's office.
All right.
Before you leave, please.
Don't leave without it.
We'll be
Any
here all day. You can remind us.
Okay.
any other additions or revisions?
I don't have.
I don't have anything.
Okay, move into correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. Give your name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. Those who are calling in via the Zoom, it's *6 to unmute yourself, or the unmute is in the lower left-hand side. And then I always remind folks that we are very informal as we move through this. So if you want to comment as we move through, then feel free to chime in.
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Leah.
So I'm Leah Watkins, Condon. I have been watching your work sessions on the grants that you guys redid. And while I was watching them, I got to thinking about how in early 2000s when I was on the school board and we were picking our way off the financial cliff, we tried to think about starting a park and rec district at that time. And we had Morrow County Park and Rec come over, give us information. We formed a committee with people from Condon and Arlington. And then at that time, I think the Arlington School District, their needs weren't as dire as ours at the time. So for a lot of different reasons, it kind of got killed. So, and I noticed a lot of your grants that you're writing to people, you know, are school districts, golf courses, all that kind of stuff that could actually fall under a park and rec district. So I would encourage you guys to maybe rethink that possibility going forward, especially if you're looking at entities, trying to wean entities off of coming back to you annually for grants. So a lot of places have, and Morrow County has one. I think the Pendleton School District has one. I mean, it's just a way to fund the extracurricular activities, the sports, which are always the first things that get cut when you have to cut stuff. So anyway, I would just throw that in.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, correspondence, we just have a communication from the Columbia Basin High School Rodeo Club. This is part of their fundraising for their sponsor program. Typically what we do is they usually are coming in for a special projects grant, and that is usually how we have funded them in the past. So we typically don't respond to this, just as an FYI, and we have them come in through our special projects grant if they need some funding from the board. And that's all I have for that. Consent agenda.
Did you have any questions
didn't.
about the consent agenda?
It's pretty
I
straightforward.
move we approve the consent agenda.
1 second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of January 19th, 2022 regular meeting minutes, consider approval of February bills pending review, and consider approval of replat of Block 66, Lancasters Edition, which is the Ballfield subdivision in Condon. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We'll move into unfinished business 5.1, which is consider approval of position description and salary schedule for public health administrator. This is just, and then I actually want to do 5.1 and 5.2 together because they go together. 5.2 is consider approval of letter to OHA requesting authorization for part-time public health administrator. So this is one of the next steps in our transition to public health. As you guys know, we've talked about and OHA has indicated to us that the public health administrator needs to be a Gilliam County employee. And so we discussed having that position come in at a 0.1 FTE and appointing Holly Winslow to that for continuity between the health district and the county. And so what you have before you is basically a job description that we borrowed from Grant County. I looked at it, Holly's taken a look at it and given some feedback. So I think we've got it pretty well covered because we're just really reflecting back to whatever the statute says at the time.
Right.
And then in addition, what we had discussed was looking at doing basically about a $500 a month for a 0.1 FTE. It has to be high.
You said 500.
So 6,000 a year, which is which tracks with what Grant County is doing with Kimberly Lindsay.
And that's under the understanding that of the total county contribution to North Central Public, it's that considering a 3% annual increase, it's in that number.
Yes. Yeah, so we would continue to, and then Holly can figure out, we'll figure out how to balance the time that she's spending from the health district administrator side and the time that she's spending as a Gilliam County employee. But yeah, the idea is that it would come out of there.
So we, according to the health OHA, we cannot actually appoint her until July 1st, correct?
Correct.
So is there compensation for the work that's going to be done between now and then, and how are we handling that?
Yeah, so we are in the process of drafting an IGA between the health district and the county that will cover. And so Holly in her capacity now, and Daleen is helping as well. We're on a lot of OHA calls right now. I would anticipate what they would be doing is billing us as the health district for their time. And then we would, I need to find a place in the budget to take it from, but probably just our SIP discretionary funds to cover the transition costs. So yeah, they are helping with the transition, but they're doing it as district employees, not as county employees. Yeah, we can't formally appoint an administrator until we're the public health authority.
Become
So-
official.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is just getting everything in place and getting the approval from OHA to actually have a part-time administrator. Just housekeeping really at this point, getting everything in line. Questions?
Nope.
I move to approve the salary schedule for the position of public health administrator as presented and to direct staff to add the position to the non-represented salary schedule.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the salary schedule for the position of public health administrator as presented and to direct staff to add the position to the non-represented salary schedule. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And I need a motion for the actual position description. It's under position, motion one.
Motion one. Oh, I jumped right to two.
I know, you went, it's fine.
I'm having trouble talking and seeing this
Pat
morning.
and I just rolled with it.
I move to approve the position description for public health administrator as presented. So I'm paying her before I actually. Money's always the most important.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the position description for public health administrator as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then I just need a letter, approval of the letter for OHA requesting the part-time health administrator.
You're rolling on these.
Oh, I'm rolling? Okay, I'll keep on rolling. I move to approve the letter to Oregon Health Authority requesting authorization for a part-time public health administrator as presented. I'm really not rolling that good.
Now, this is basically, we're asking OHA for the approval to do what Grant County did, and there's only been a couple of counties that are kind of in there, so that
Mhm.
it'll be up to them where it goes from there.
Yes, they will say yes or no. If they say no, then we'll have to regroup and figure out what we need to do to.
That is pleasing them.
Mhm.
Did you make a motion?
I
She
did.
made the
Oh, second.
motion.
Oh, we're just in discussion, okay.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approved a letter to Oregon Health Authority requesting authorization for part-time public health administrator as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, awesome. We'll get that moving. The next one goes right into Gilliam County Public Health Transition Update. So as I just made reference to, Holly, Deline, and I are in a constant stream of meetings and email chains with the various departments that make up public health under OHA. Just right now, what they are trying to do, I think, is give us an overview of each of the program elements and the specific things that the state requires, or in some cases, the feds require of us. So the first meeting that we had was with WIC, and they walked us through staffing requirements, things like that. So that was helpful. And the idea being that by March 18th, we need to get back to OHA about which of the program elements that we are going to be implementing, which we are going to be subcontracting, and any that we may be giving back to the state.
How are we arriving at that? What's the process to determine that?
So right now what we're doing is kind of the due diligence part, which is just meeting with each of the sort of program experts, specialists to walk through. And then based on what they tell us, then my first conversation is usually with Holly that says, does this sound like something that health district can take on, or is this something that we need to look to subcontract elsewhere or to get back to the state? We've always known, for instance, that the environmental health was something that the health district was the county health district, not the public health district. It's going to get confusing as we go. Didn't have the personnel for. We had talked about maybe subcontracting out, and I think we're starting those conversations just to see if some of the neighboring counties are interested in providing those services. Some of them are going to be right in the districts will have, like immunizations, things like that they're already doing. Reproductive health, those kinds of things I think are, it's just a matter of making sure all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So what I anticipate is we should have, I'm hoping, most of the meetings wrapped up by the first meeting in March. And that I would hope that we could then just say, here is what we are proposing, and allow the court to consider that. And that will allow Holly and I to figure out any subcontractors and actually nail down who some of the subcontractors would be. We don't actually have to sign the agreements. We just have to let OHA know so that they can start drafting the agreements that we need to put in place. And then also so their staff knows that they need to onboard, who they're onboarding, basically. So
at that point, are we going to have a fairly good budget put together on where we're at? Or will that be, I mean, at some point what's the cost of environmental services? And, what is it that the health district's going to be compensated for that they provide to the county? The whole package, so that you've got a whole.
Yeah.
To look at where we're at.
Yeah, I think.
And also startup costs, so we know where we're at on the startup costs.
The startup costs, I think, will definitely be coming through when we do the IGA. We'll be capturing those in there. So you'll see that come through as part of that draft, that process. For the actual standing up of and doing the services, we do have, OHA has given us what they anticipate we will be receiving for each of the program elements. So we'll be able to sort of fill that in, that information. Some of them are like fee for service, so it's just going to depend on how many inspections we have and things like that. But depending on subcontracts for like environmental health, we should be able to firm those things up as well. And then in terms of the budget, I need to navigate with OHA what that actually needs to look like, because really for most of these program elements, we're going to be handing over the funds to the district, and it's going to be primarily up to the district to make the money work on their end. So I don't think our budget is going to be really
Affected.
detailed in the sense of like, this is how much for district's personnel, because the money's just going to go over to the district, and then Holly will have that in the district's budget. That makes sense. That of course is dependent on how much OHA wants us to document in our budget. So, but we should be able to see a pretty good breakdown of what each of the program elements will bring in, anything that we're subcontracting, what we anticipate the costs for those will be.
But the actual budget that we're gonna be looking at in April will show like one line item that says, basically say public health.
So it would have Holly's, the 0.1 FTE. So it would have at the top, the employee, you know, because we'll have
Right.
a little bit of benefits in there, you know, taxes, things like that, that Ellen will need to have at the top. And then it will have, I am assuming, this is an assumption, that it would show a transfer to the health district for any program elements that they're doing. And then any other subcontracts are actually coming through us. So
Right.
environmental health
Right.
will come through us. So that will also show us, you know, there might be an environmental health line that is showing a transfer out basically. And then we'll have revenues coming in that will track the different, both the county's contributions and then OHA's.
So does
funds
the
coming in.
county, I mean, I'm assuming OHA will be appropriating that money to the county, and then we pass it on. So it will come into our budget as a revenue item from OHA and then
Yes.
out to wherever those services are provided.
It is somewhat similar to how our mental health dollars come in, where they're coming in as line items, and then we have, or as revenue items, and then they're going out to CCS. It'll look somewhat similar to that, except that we do have a part-time employee, so the transfers, it'll look a little different.
And I think where the details are gonna be are in our budget.
Yeah.
Which we will definitely
Yeah,
share
I
that
get
with
that.
you. Yeah.
Chris?
So can you tell me, I guess I'm a little confused when you say elements that the county will be delivering and then that will be subcontracted, but then sent back to the state? You say that, or will be given back to the state? What do you mean by that will be giving back to the state or staying with the state?
So I don't anticipate this, but there are some, for instance, there are some program elements that if the county or the district decided there's not enough money basically to do that, some of these program elements, there's the option of saying, no, state, you're actually responsible for this.
Okay.
So far in our meetings that we've had, I don't, and Holly, correct me if you think I'm mistaken in this. So far, I think we have local options, whether that's the district doing it or an environmental health, maybe looking at some of our neighboring counties. But the state has said at times, if this is something, because some of these program elements, we're talking about just a couple $1,000s. And so if it's not cost effective for some of these, there is the option of the county saying this particular item, we want the state to provide because we don't have a local option that's cost effective.
And then they potentially would find their own subcontractor
Yep.
for it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
And WIC's
Okay.
a perfect example
Okay.
because we get the feeling the state is trying to sway us
Okay.
from WIC.
And
And so if we said, no, we're not gonna take on WIC, then the state would say, okay, well, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna contract with North Central Public Health to provide WIC services for Gilliam County. That's how that works.
Okay. That's what I wondered. if
Yeah.
you were- Okay.
Yeah, and so there's program elements such as WIC that we're pretty adamant that we need to provide it. And the money It's one of the program elements that takes the most time, and the most effort and most staff, but it's one of the ones that doesn't get very much money. So that's where the county's money would come in and help subsidize that program.
And to give you an idea on the WIC one was the very first one we did. So I definitely concur with Holly's read that OHA, I think, feels that that is the one that they're most nervous about, I would say, us being able to meet. And in fairness to them, I think part of the reason they're nervous is because that's federal money that's coming in, and the feds in particular are very prescriptive about what you have to have for staffing, how you document. I mean, it's very regimented. And so they want to make sure that we're being mindful that the big funder is very specific and is and really watching that we are following
So-
everything to the letter.
So that kind of begs the question. So you've had the read and you're kind of there, you know how that feels. And I guess is we want to do that locally. I mean, it doesn't make sense to give it to the state to have it give back to North Central. We just got out of North Central.
Right, and WIC is one of the first program elements that our medical providers acknowledged years ago, that they didn't feel like that their patients were getting the appropriate WIC services. So that was one of the ones that we were really wanting to do. So then both our medical providers are on board, and they're not afraid.
But it sounds like from the financial side, it's the most difficult for the county.
It is,
Also.
but then I think the state, when we started asking questions, I sense they're like, okay, backed off a little bit, because they don't know the numbers for Gilliam County until we ask for them. And they gave them to us. So, you know, they see North Central's numbers, and I think they're like, oh, we only get $10,000. How are you going to have a registered dietitian for the high risk kiddos and parents? So, but then once you get the numbers, it's like, oh, okay, well.
For like 4. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's on WIC, the challenge. And we have options. Holly and I have been sort of brainstorming on places we can go, but that is a good example. For instance, you have to have a registered dietitian. Well, it doesn't make sense necessarily for the district to employ a full-time dietitian. So we're trying to figure out things like, you know, does MCNC have a dietitian that we could, that is WIC certified, that could provide some hours to meet this? So it's just those kinds of like really logistical things that we're just working through for each of the program elements. Right now, from what we've seen, I think the feeling is that we would be looking at doing, this is sort of the preview for the March kind of pitch, I think, is that we would be maintaining all of the same program elements that North Central Public Health currently has for us, that all of the ones that are non-environmental and public and drinking water, I think the district is probably able to handle those so far that we've seen, and that we would be looking at subcontracting the environmental and the drinking water out to another entity.
Isn't the drinking water part of the environmental?
No, it's separate, and I think, Jalen can speak to this, but I believe it's from DEQ. I mean,
But
You
the
have to have an
drinking
agreement with
water currently has been managed through North Central and by their environmental department.
Yeah, so typically, yes, it falls under the environmental health program, but there are, drinking water is a good example, like Chris said, of programs that counties give back to the state, because the environmental health specialist, that has to be provided by an environmental health specialist. So yes, it's typically under environmental health. A lot of counties give the drinking water back to the state. Umatilla County is a good example of that, and the state contracts where they have somebody out of Pendleton that provides that for the different counties.
like that's it. And like, for
But the
instance,
septic's in that too, isn't it?
Septic is part of that as well,
Is
yeah.
it separate from water, or, I mean, how's that?
There is not a separate program element for the septic like there is the drinking water. Yes, it falls under the environmental health scope.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. I think the big takeaways though for us as a court to know is that the deadline to at least tell OHA which programs we want and sort of give them a overview of our plan. That's the other thing that I wanted to just note on the record, that they are making us put together a plan, which is fine.
Yeah.
We did ask if other counties had ever been required to do that, and they said no. So it's
Oh.
just a special thing that we get to do, which is fun. Again, I think this is just them being nervous that they want to make sure that we're doing,
That's okay.
that's fine.
We can show them we can do it.
Exactly. So that plan, which outlines which program elements we're taking and how we're going to be providing the service, whether it's through a subcontract or whatever, is due to them by the 18th of March. And so we're gonna, I mean, we have a meeting this afternoon, we have a meeting tomorrow, we have a meeting next week with OHA. So there'll be a lot of sort of moving pieces, but it's starting to firm up, I think, on how each of the program elements is going to be handled. And then once we have that, then OHA will be sending us out contracts to actually have our legal counsel review, and we can move forward with doing that. The other thing, just as a marker, is that OHA's rules say that we have to notify them at least 75 days before if we're going to be subcontracting out. So all of these dates will kind of coalesce, I think, in the next month or two. Things will really start rolling in terms of actually making decisions on what we're going to do.
That's not very far away.
No.
I
it's gonna
know.
happen fast.
I know. So I would anticipate that the first meeting in March maybe will for sure lay out, okay, this is the plan that we think is the best fit. And I think at that point we can share some numbers, just high level, this is how much we are anticipating for environmental health. Here's what the subcontract would look like, those kinds of things. And then it's not necessarily something that the court has to vote on. I think if we can operate from consensus, because the IGAs will actually come back to us, and that'll be when we formally approve that this is what we're doing. But this way, that'll give you guys some time to provide some input, make sure everything sounds good to you.
Okay. That's a work.
Yeah. Yes. Anything that I missed?
Didn't know if you wanted to mention that we were talking to Umatilla County.
Oh, yeah. So for the environmental health stuff, I think when Holly and Daleen first presented the feasibility, we had talked about either Umatilla County or Grant County doing the environmental health. Grant County has since said that they are at capacity and aren't able to take us on. And so we are talking to Umatilla County about providing the environmental health stuff. I think that would be, at this point, probably our preferred route. So, and I don't know, have they given you guys numbers yet on what, are we still?
Not yet. He was, when we just talked to him on Friday. Yeah, Friday we had a meeting with him, and he had to get some numbers, I think, from the state on something. And then they were going to talk amongst themselves and put together kind of a proposal is what they.
So I understand the concerns over North Central, but I think it would be appropriate to get pricing from them also.
Okay.
To what? I'm sorry?
From
Yeah.
North Central.
Pricing
Oh,
from
from
North
North
Central. I mean, they've actually shored their environmental department up pretty well recently. And I know all their staff, so that's why I say that, but.
Yeah, we kind of have a little bit of their
And
pricing.
I'm on their board of directors.
Yeah, we have a little bit of
We're a
their
little bit longer.
pricing. And we're just, we're just a little concerned because they haven't done inspections for over 2 years.
Well, that's not true now, but,
Well, yeah.
but that, yeah, I mean, that was the case for sure.
Yeah.
With COVID.
And so we know Umatilla started up their inspections
last year.
Well, I think they did too, but they didn't do them here, which is typical of what's going on with North Central. They did them in the Dallas.
Exactly.
Still County got the service.
Yeah, we can, if you would like to see that, we can.
Well, I think it'd be a
bring
good
both.
idea to get a cost comparison anyway, if nothing else.
Yeah, and they will break down, we did talk to them about the fees for all the restaurant inspections and RV park and the hotel. And typically, most of them are under what North Central charges.
I think that's what you'll find in the end. I just like to make sure. we go
But
through that.
I think what we are going to be faced with is they will have a base fee.
They're a neighbor,
Mhm.
and out of courtesy if nothing else, so that we can say, no, you were too high price.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll happy to do that, but hopefully you look at the service too, when you're looking at the numbers.
All right, we'll just grant, okay, Marion County. First Marion County, yeah.
Anything else on that? Questions?
At this time.
We'll keep it on the agenda. Like I
Okay.
said, some of the big decisions are gonna happen in the next couple of weeks. So, so stay tuned and we're just gonna keep working with OHA. It sounds like they just appointed somebody to help us through this whole process, who was just designated for us. So, we are gonna be meeting her, I think, on Thursday. So, so hopefully, we have some additional capacity from them to walk us through all these things. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah.
you.
Until next time. And congratulations on being the administrator,
Oh,
public health administrator.
To be, right?
To be, July 1. Okay, let's move into 5.4, which is consider approval of amendments to memorandum of agreement for attainable housing incentive programs with Pioneer Community Development Corporation. So this is just to recap. Back on November 3rd, we had our housing work session here. And PCDC was here, the city of Condon was here, several developers were here. And one of the things that we talked about during the meeting was the need to update some of the incentives for the Affordable Housing Development Program, just based on what PCDC is hearing from contractors and just as how needs have changed, I think, throughout the duration of the program. So, and then in addition to that, if you guys recall, the city is looking at a development on the golf course and has been in discussions with the PCDC board about whether they would be willing to sort of be the point agency on it, manage that. And so the PCDC board met recently and are asking for some amendments to our memorandum of agreement, which I've outlined here. One would be authorizing funding for the workforce housing development study. So we have been put in touch with a developer out of Portland who does these sorts of things that could then look at the golf course property and give PCDC an idea of costs and units, number of units, and all kinds of stuff. Basically help with some of the technical expertise that maybe, since most of us are not developers, that none of us really have. So the hope would be that they could then give PCDC a better idea of what they, the size of the project and also what that may cost. And then within the current incentive programs, the board also had some additional things that they wanted to do. One is increase the cap of the funds that can be used as grants to 125,000. Currently, it's capped at 50,000. Increase the per unit grant for new construction of rental properties to 20,000. Currently, it's at 10. Offer a $10,000 bonus grant for builders and investors that built a new single or multifamily unit on a lot where a derelict house was demolished. So just another incentive to get those now empty lots, homes built on them. It says here, the note is that the bonus grant would be paid at the completion of construction, and the per unit grants are paid when the grantee signs and records a 5-year rental agreement. And then also increasing construction loan amounts, I'm assuming based on what materials look like and other things, that makes a lot of sense. So the proposal is to move to increase it to $250,000. It's currently $225,000 for single family projects, and then $370,000 up from $337,000 for multifamily projects. I have not sent this to legal counsel yet and wanted to make sure that you guys were okay with it. If these all sound good, I think what I'm asking today is for a motion on the concepts, and then to allow me and legal counsel to finalize something so that PCDC can go forward with getting the study started and all those kinds of things, so that we're not caught up waiting for council to get us something back and then the court to meet again and approve it. So I'm asking for a pre-approval. Is what I'm asking for.
I've got a couple of comments, but I mean, I really like the concept of maybe there's some incentive here to maybe make some things happen. Question one is, the rumor is that PCDC is not very interested in the golf course property. I don't know how true that is, but is that they don't think there's a need for housing? And I mean, this is stuff
No,
I've
it's
heard.
not, I don't know where that rumor came from, but actually the board at our last meeting, we're behind it. I mean, I don't know where
I
that,
hope so.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
You know, it's certainly not, it's not my opinion, and that's not what the board has
Okay.
expressed. I mean, they just voted at our last meeting to bring these things to you and move forward on the feasibility study for the golf course.
Perfect. Do you think on 5 on here, the 225 to 250 and 337 to 370 is will those loans drive some housing, do you think?
I think so. We actually started at 180 originally, and this was just, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And then we went to 225, and now we're at 250 based on where we're seeing. We've got a new project getting started right across the street here. That's probably going to be close to 300,000. Just, to build it, there's going to be like a big shop. I think it's eating up a lot of it, but I think the grants, this is the reason that we want to increase the grants. The grants, I think, have much more of a motivating factor for investors and builders than the loans are really more for, people that want to, build a house here, or an investor can combine the loan with the grants, but the grants are really what we need to drive it. Like the $10,000 bonus for somebody to build on a derelict lot. We've heard from investors and builders that if they go in and buy a derelict property, they're paying for that derelict house that's not worth anything, that they're actually going to have to pay to remove it, which they can use one of our grants for that as well. But that's our thinking, is that we really need to get aggressive on this. We currently have $990,000 in available funds, that are basically just sitting there. And the board has decided, and I totally agree that we're going to have to get, a little bit more aggressive to, get things moving.
Good.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Questions? You guys, and are you guys comfortable with approving amendments and then just allowing me to finalize and execute an
Yes.
amendment? Okay.
The derelict lots, do we have several of those where, wasn't PCDC going in and cleaning up some of those lots, and then they're sitting
Well,
vacant now?
we weren't doing it. I mean,
But there was a grant.
there's a
for people
grant for
to
the
do that.
demolition we've demoed 3 properties in Condon. One of them has a brand new manufactured house sitting on it. And then trying to think, it's been so long since we demoed it. We've got 2 other demo grants that are applications that we're looking at right now in Condon as well. So that's what we're trying to get at. And this bonus is also sort of trying to get around people who want us to pay them to demo this thing, and then somebody else buys it so that they can have view protection or
Oh, yeah, right. You did
They don't want
talk about
neighbors.
that
whatever
earlier.
it might be.
Yeah.
And our legal counsel has said that you really can't put anything out there that tells somebody what they can or can't do with their property. We don't want to, get into that, but we can, do things to try to incentivize people to
build.
to build.
So on the bonus grant, is that only for stick build?
It could be manufactured. I mean, has to be and it could be a manufacturer that you bring in. That's fine. It just has to be on a foundation, and obviously it can't be a mobile home. But just like the lot that I talked about, it's a manufactured house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That the guy brought in. It's just really out here. It's for an investor, it's cheaper to bring in that than it is to stick build.
Sure,
Mhm.
but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, here we are, this is where we are, so that's, those are the kind of things we look at, but, no, so these are all just ideas to really kind of, jumpstart this thing again. We were off to a really good start before the pandemic hit, and you look at our grant numbers, we did like 60,000 or 75,000 the first 18 months, and we've only done about 40,000 in the last 2 years, because people just are unsure what's going to happen. But I think with interest rates obviously going to move up a little bit here, it's going to make rentals even more attractive because less people will be able to look at buying a home. So I think the need is certainly there. I think we might even see actually some costs come down by certainly next year for sure. I think there'll be some pullback. We're starting to see some pullback in lumber markets, that type of stuff. So it's just a matter who's going to win, the labor market or the materials market or both.
Right.
So it's tough for these folks to make things pencil, especially out here. But we're going to keep trying to find ways to help them.
Okay, Commissioner, so I would need, and there's some motion language in there, just approving the proposed amendments as described, and then authorizing me to work with legal counsel to get that memorialized in writing and executed with PCBC.
I move to approve the proposed amendments to the MOA for attainable housing and city programs as discussed, and authorize the county judge in consultation with legal counsel to finalize and execute an amendment to the memorandum of agreement reflecting the same.
And I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed amendments to the memorandum of agreement for attainable housing incentive programs as discussed, and to authorize the county judge in consultation with legal counsel to finalize and execute an amendment to the memorandum of agreement reflecting the same. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I will email our legal counsel this afternoon and ask her to turn around an amendment. Once I have one, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, let's move on to 6.1, which is consider approval of revisions to 2022 Gilliam County Employee Handbook. Knowing that we're still onboarding or finding an HR consultant, I thought it might be prudent for us, Ellen has already had a couple of times where the CBA is in conflict with the employee handbook. And so I thought I had a few minutes and thought I might just go through and try to at least update the big changes that were made in the CBA. And so that is mostly what is before you. There are several amendments. I'm just going to walk through them. There's one that is a policy change. The rest are administrative. So, amendment number 1 is just updating dates throughout to reflect it's the 2022 edition. The number 2, which is administrative, again, the temporary employee definition in the union contract has the language for no greater than 1,040 hours maximum or 6 months. The handbook previously just had 6 months. And so I thought it was prudent to have those two match so that we know what a temporary employee is. Administrative change, this is an amendment number 3, is just taking the payday section, which is located on page 15, and substituting in the CBA language. If you recall, we moved the payday to no later than the 6th rather than the last Thursday, which is what it used to be. So that's just substituting that. Amendment number 4, this is the one proposed policy change. So it would allow sick leave to be paid out for retirement, death, or resignation with 14 days notice. So currently the policy reads that we will pay out sick leave for retirement or death. However, one of the things that Ellen runs into every time somebody leaves is how to determine whether it's retirement or not. We have had multiple employees throughout the years retire and then go on and have jobs outside of the county. And so it has been difficult for Ellen to determine, does this count as retirement? Is this just a resignation? And are we really in a position to question if somebody says they're retiring, we don't have control over what they do when they leave the county. And so she and I have been talking for a while that maybe the simplest thing is to just include resignation with appropriate notice, so that she is not in a position where she's trying to make the call on whether something's a retirement or not.
Which basically makes her call somebody a liar if they say that and she
I guess
doesn't think so.
I have a hard time with, because sick leave is a benefit for somebody that's working to not suffer while they're working. And this is like, well, you retire and we're going to give you a little reward, or you quit, or you turn your resignation. If you quit, we're going to give you a little reward.
Yeah. Well, it's been sort of a longstanding on retirement or death. But it is, I mean, I just think my mom might be a good example. Hopefully she doesn't mind that I throw this out here, but when she retired from the state, she was in her, I think, mid-50s, completely intending to retire, and then got home and was bored. And she came back. And so somebody who's watching from the outside may be like, is that an actual retirement? Well, sometimes even our employees intend to retire and decide for whatever reason they need to come back into the workforce financially or just out of boredom.
It's
And
real
or
common.
to help
It's
out.
real common in the workforce today for people to retire and find out the cost of healthcare doesn't work.
Yeah,
with
they
their
can't afford
retirement
to
and they come back
retire.
to work. But yeah, I mean, I understand, but I think, I don't know how you define retirement, because if you're in the service, a lot of people retire from the service to go get a job.
Mhm.
It's just a little different for me, retiring resignation.
I guess
You sick leave.
if you're actually pulling a retirement, actually getting paid from
Right.
a retirement fund, then you're actually retired
Retired.
from someplace.
Mhm.
Or if you retire and draw Social Security is kind of an idea that, yeah, we are.
Because, I mean, Mark Mitchell did the same thing. He retired from OSB with 27 in and was pulling hers, but came back to work for us,
Went to work for the county.
for another 8 years because he got bored, type of thing. So.
But there may also be people who decide that they are going to retire and maybe they're still too young to draw hers and they're just going to wait until they're eligible.
I might have to think about that.
Now you know.
I didn't know that.
It's in the handbook. It was in the CBA. So anyway, this is this is just something that I wanted to throw out there that I think administratively would simplify some things for Ellen, because we have had, regularly, we've had employees who have retired from the county and gone on to work elsewhere.
It does take out any employees that have not given 14 days notice, which is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, I had
I don't
that
have a
near
problem with
our
that.
vacation pay is similar. It says that they need to give notice, so. And I think it should be, because it's expanding, so the CBA says retirement or death, it's limited to that, but I think because we're expanding the benefit, I don't think the union is gonna have any issues with.
And then the benefit would apply to the union as well, even though it's not in the CBA.
Correct, yes.
So how does the language sick leave is provided by the county solely for the nature of insurance against loss of income due to illness or injury fall in line with giving it to them when they resign?
Well, how does it fall in line if they retire or they die? Same thing.
Yes, it is. It doesn't, it's like a, know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I do hear what you're saying.
So the other clarifying things in that particular paragraph, this is on page 20. If we decided to move forward with the resignation language, I struck the no compensation for accrued sick leave shall be provided for any employee upon termination of employment except for death or retirement, because if we're allowing resignation, then that's no longer applicable. The other thing, and this is something we'll just note on the record for the next CBA as well, there is some old language that says employees who on October 1st, 1994 have 600 hours of blah, blah, blah. I understand we have, from some of our long timers who've been around, said that this was something when they negotiated the contract back in the 90s, that they were transitioning from a higher payout to a lower payout. And that language was kept in there to protect people who on 1994 had accrued more hours and were going to lose those. And
That would be me, and that's
That
about
sounds
it.
like the
I believe
1995
we may
floating
still have one
holiday
union
waste
employee.
Oh, yeah.
That's
but
That went away too.
so I think my dad is the only one who's been there that long, but here's the key. He would not have accrued 600 hours on that day. I think he would have been a county employee for maybe a year or two. So I checked with Ellen and she said there are no employees that would have accrued that much time on that particular date. So I'm proposing, it's still in the CBA. So on the off chance there is a union employee they would still qualify for that, but I am suggesting we strike that. And then when the next CBA comes around, clean that up. I think nobody touched it because nobody was sure why it was in there. But it's a holdover from, I think, a 1990 CBA negotiation that is still sitting in the policy that nobody's
How do we
touched.
remember to bring that back?
Remember in 3 years that this is something that probably can be axed out of the contract, but I'm suggesting we start by moving it out of the employee handbook.
Robert Malkin and Dave Messenger thing.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was folks who were going to lose something in that current CBA, and so they just inserted language for those, I think, a handful of employees. But it's been a holdover that I think nobody's, like I said, nobody's touched
Nobody
because,
qualifies for it
well, we
anymore.
didn't, none of us knew exactly why it was there, I think, and we didn't want to hurt anybody, so we left it in there. But I don't think it's applicable anymore. Okay, so are you guys comfortable with that policy change? Do you want to discuss it more?
Yep.
And yes, to your question, Kelly, it would apply to everybody. So,
Thank you.
yes. Okay, if not, then amendment number 5 is just updating the language on the floating holidays. Basically, I just struck the current section and added the union language. The reason being, in the original language, it did not, so the CBA specifies if employees are hired between January 1 and June 30th. that they get one floating holiday. The employee handbook did not have that language, and so I'm just having the two mirror. That was basically why, and I just cut and pasted from the CBA. Administrative, this is just our employee assistance program. The Cascade Centers changed their name to Canopy, and so that's just updating references to Canopy and how to reach them. So the website needs to be updated. Amendment number 7 on page 41 is just adding the air ambulance insurance that the court approved several months back for everybody. So that's adding that in. And then amendment number 8, again, is just administrative. Multiple times it referenced, if you have questions, contact the chief of staff. If you want to report a harassment, contact the chief of staff. And so I just removed references to the chief of staff. In most cases, it says to report or to talk to your direct supervisor or the county judge and sometimes the county clerk, depending on the nature of the, on benefits, for instance, it'll say to contact the county clerk if people have questions. So that's just a housekeeping thing to clean that up so employees know where they need to go if they have questions. And other than that, basically it's just trying to get the employee handbook synced up with the CBA. Questions?
Other than a little heartburn over the sick leave, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. I move to approve amendments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to the 2022 Gilliam County Employee Handbook as presented and to direct staff to update the handbook accordingly.
Oh, second.
I was like, I'll second it. I move to, it's been moved and seconded to approve amendments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to the 2022 Gilliam County Employee Handbook as presented and to direct staff to update the handbook accordingly. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move into 6.2, which is consider approval of road department equipment replacement. Do we, Pat, which one of you wants to take this?
I'll let Dewey go forward.
This is to replace the skid steer loader that we have with rock crusher. We've had multiple issues with it. It actually failed on them day before yesterday. Left an employee stuck in it. Takes another employee, has to come and let them out.
Oh, no.
And
That's happened more than
it's
once.
it's all electrical.
That's
boy.
happened more than once. though,
That's
correct?
exciting.
It happened to me right out here. And
Oh.
I had to call Gary and have him come rescue me and let me out. It runs on a 20 amp fuse. Brad's got a 30 amp fuse in it right now to keep it running. Potential of burning up a lot more stuff. Gary has gone completely through it. We had the cab off, everything. It has some gremlins in it that we can't seem to find. It's time that it just went away. Western States has been gracious enough to let us have another machine to test run to see if the crew like it. It's bigger. I don't know if you've seen my crusher crew. They're all
Big.
fairly good sized gentlemen. They all fit better in it. And then all of the parts, pieces, tools that we use on the implements are all interchangeable. So there's nothing new we have to do. We just load the old one up, haul it to Pendleton, Pasco, wherever they'd like it, and then do the paperwork. I have reached out to other suppliers. They will give us a price, but they will not give us service. And that's the problem we have out here. Western States actually has a service tech that lives right here in Condon. He's great. We call him. He'll either stop that night or first thing in the morning and troubleshoot for us, get Gary lined out. It's by far the best way for us to go. And plus it's Sourcewell. These companies have gone to where they put it on Sourcewell, get you through all the legal requirements and everything. And plus you get a heck of a, I guess, a cut on the price.
Mhm. Questions?
Stock?
Hmm?
And they have it in stock already, you don't have to
Where's
order
it happen?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
It's in Gilliam County.
Yeah.
It doesn't take you a year to order it.
Well, just from a
that
practical
work?
standpoint, I don't think we want equipment where our crews are getting locked inside and needing rescue as a general practice.
My experience is we want to stay with Caterpillar too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Tried and true.
Okay, so if you guys were prepared to move forward, I would just need a motion to accept the bid from Western States, and then to authorize the trade-in of the used cat, and I think that can be done in one motion.
I move to accept the bid from Western States for the new Cat 236D skid loader in the amount of $33,278.43, and to authorize a trade-in of the used Cat 226B skid steer loader.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the bid from Western States for the new Cat 236D skid steer loader in the amount of $33,278.43, and to authorize trade-in of the used Cat 226B skid steer loader. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Okay, I will get brand new paperwork from the salesman, so I can get your signature.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Last one, here's 6.3, which is consider approval of resolution number R 2022-02, a resolution declaring a county vehicle as surplus. This is a request from the sheriff's office for their 2016 Chevy Tahoe. Has 121,000 plus miles, 6 years old, and has a blown transmission. So recommendation is that we surplus it on public auction or publicsurplus.com with a minimum bid of $1.
Please come take it off our
Some
hands.
lucky person. Yep, so it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Where did we arrive at the dollar?
Gary wanted to put 0, but Teresa's like, well, we should put 1 at least.
I'm just curious.
I'll give you $1.
When we do surplus, do we have criteria that we're using for mileage and years to determine that we can make the statement that it has served its useful life?
It depends on the vehicle. So the public transportation vehicles, the state has guidance on what they consider useful life. And so there's certain mileage requirements on the grant funded vehicles. On others, the county fleet, the sheriff's office, it really just kind of depends.
This has been a troubled vehicle for years. This is, I think, the second, engine and transmission we put in it. I can't remember how many times. And Gary's finally like, okay, we got to get rid of this. Yeah, so he's just decided it's time to go.
Lemon law.
Yeah, pretty much. So I guess he just decided it was time for it to go. I will tell you though, we just, within the last 2 weeks, put the work crew / Teddy Suburban that we paid $5,200 for, and sold it on the public surplus site this week, and I think we've got $6,200 for it. We put what was the other vehicle? The Scion for the transportation. I want to say that we've got over $6,000 coming in for it. And I think can't remember, was minimum for $3,500 on it. I think we've got over 6,000 coming in for that. It's amazing.
So
This site.
when we place something and we put a minimum on it, is that or put a surplus, is it always set at a minimum and then we take bids? Is that the way that?
Yes, and we usually do it for like, I want to say Gary does it for 5 days. I think he usually sets it for 5 days. Right now, we are taking bids right now on the Impala, from the Arlington Impala. We did make a deal with Chris Patnode, and we actually gave her, we were gonna surplus the Trailblazer that we had from the city of Condon. You know, we took that city of Condon Trailblazer. But we went ahead and decided to give her that Trailblazer. So we have given her that Trailblazer in place of that Impala that we took from Arlington.
So does it fall under the fleet now? Is that,
It is not, it's going to be dedicated to Judge Patno because if she needed it in an emergency to come to Condon, then it really can't be out with another employee. And so it will be a dedicated vehicle for the Justice Court.
Yeah, so she has that. In fact, I think Gary may have taken that down there Monday for her. So that's down there now. But it's amazing the kind of money that we get off that
Used-
public surplus
well,
side.
used rigs today are just at the
There's,
premium.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
then the last Tahoe we sold actually had a blown, I want to say it had a blown engine or something on it too. And some guy from Seattle came all the way down with the trailer and trailered it back up to Seattle because he had other Tahoes and it had a blown engine. And I think we got I want to say $5,000 for it last time too, just for the body and everything in it. So yeah, it's amazing what we're getting off this public surplus
I
site.
wonder, there's so many stolen vehicles.
Commissioner Shannon, to answer your question,
Yeah.
when the Impala was on last meeting, I did the Kelly Blue Book range and
I remember
attached it.
that.
So, yeah, so there is a little bit of research that goes into a minimum bid, you know, because you put all that criteria
I
in.
saw the blue, I remember seeing the blue book, and I wonder, that was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you look at, say it had 130,000, that's the two questions I had, I didn't really get into about surplus rates. In that case was 130,000, is it really used its serviceable life? Because to me, today, you should be able to run one for a couple $100,000 if you're taking care of it. And then, are we just discounted by $500 to get out the door, or is there an opportunity to at least get to an actual
And I
value, especially in today's used car market?
And I think that Gary takes a look at how much of a problem we've had with our vehicles. Like right now, we have our Chevy Caprice that he drove forever. It's a 2011, but it's a dang good car. We've used it as our spare either the guys have been in and out of it. And he's been driving a Dodge Durango, a 20 Dodge Durango, and he's about ready to go back to the Caprice because the Durango's a little bit too slow for him. But the Caprice has been a great car, and I think he's gonna, keep it as a spare because it seems like we always have, something going on with everybody, trading out and going in between stuff. So we always have a spare. And like right now, the Suburban, the mobile command unit Suburban, it's in the shop, blew a transmission. And so we're to the point of, we're probably going to go ahead and get it stripped out and get it put in for surplus here pretty soon. And instead of going for a whole mobile command unit, like that actually was paid from a 2010 Homeland Security grant that I got for that unit. We're looking at probably going for actually mobile command trailer, buying a utility trailer and outfitting the whole trailer, and then just getting some type of a pickup to be able to pull the trailer. But we're probably going to get rid of that Suburban. It blew a transmission on me in Arlington in July, and then in November we were in it trying to go to Portland to go pick up 2 Interceptors, and it blew. It got hot on us on the way to Portland, and so it's back in the shop again. So we're like, yeah. It's a 2005 and so yeah, one thing after another with it.
You have to have something reliable.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, any concerns about the resolution? And if not, I need a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2022-02 as presented.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2022-02 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Sorry, my mind went somewhere else. I was done with that.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I'm like,
It was serious stuff. Shenanigans.
Okay.
Was it shenanigans?
so let's talk about next meeting. First
You
of
got
all,
an addition? Did we do the addition?
Yeah,
Under
and we added
consent
it to the
To the
consent agenda.
Okay, so first, some housekeeping. One is, today is Teresa's last meeting with us. And so I just wanted to take a minute, not to put you on the spot and embarrass you, but I'm going to anyway, because I can. And just tell you how grateful and appreciative I am for your service to Gilliam County. It's been a rough couple of years, honestly, with the pandemic and everything else. And Teresa takes on more and more and more and always raises her hand. And for instance, the stuff that she has been doing with the safety committee, where she's got people engaged in something that when I came into office was really not even functioning. Just every project that I have handed to her, she has taken and run with and made something better of it. So I just want to thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I was really surprised. Yeah, you've been a lot of help to me.
We're going to miss you. And with her departure tomorrow, we are without staff at the county court for a short period of time. So this begs the question on our meeting schedule, whether we will hold the second February meeting. I will say my preference would be to not and to allow us to get staff on board so that we can, because I'm assuming I will probably be, even though it's your staff that we're hiring, that I will probably be onboarding them mostly since I'm in the office.
I plan to come and help you with that so that you don't have to carry that entire
Perfect.
responsibility.
So are you guys okay with us? Just looking at our calendar, I don't think we have anything that has to be done in late February that we would. But if something did come up, we could definitely just do a one-off special meeting and just take care of it. But I guess my proposal is that we cancel the second meeting in February unless something comes up that requires a special meeting. And then resume, hopefully on March 2nd, we would have staff, at least your assistant, on board by that point.
That gives us the option to.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we never, I realize we have a special meeting if we need to. I think it would be really bad luck to skip two.
Yeah.
And, we're trying to conduct the business of the county in about 4 hours a month right now, which is a big job. And so, I know I was a little hesitant when I got the phone call because I want to make sure when we get to here that we don't have anything coming up. And I don't see anything or know of anything either. So I don't have a problem with maybe a skipping one, but I sure think we need to really focus on trying to have our first meeting in March.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, my big concern.
Well, we have things that are going to come up that we do need to talk about in the first meeting in March.
Well, in the filling the position that we have posted today, there's going to be. Are we going to need to bring that to the court?
No.
Okay.
Doesn't
So,
need to come
and
to
then,
us.
I guess, and then you're in the works, I guess.
Yeah, my intention was to see how your interviews go this week. If you get somebody on board, I'm kind of figuring out what I don't want to do is swamp myself with public health. I'm trying to manage how much time I have with each of these things. And so while I think bringing my staff member on quickly would be awesome, I also am cognizant that these deadlines for public health are coming up right around the time that applications would be coming back. And so I'm trying to figure out a schedule where I'm not inadvertently swapping myself rather than helping myself, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping we can get your assistant hired who can at least do the minutes and kind of help me get the packets out for the beginning of March, with hopefully my assistant coming in mid to late March, I think is probably realistic.
Sounds like a plan.
Does that sound okay? The other just announcement thing of note for people that I wanted to have is that we are opening the competitive grants shortly. So there will be an ad in the paper. Those applications will just come into me for now until we get staff in place, and then I can hand them over to your assistant once they're hired. So the current deadline that we're working with would be the 15th of March as the deadline. Nathan is anticipating the budget committee will start its work in mid-April. So that will give us about a month after the applications come in to go through the first cycle. And then they probably wouldn't hit the budget committee itself until late April or early May. And so that should give us plenty of time to do the due diligence that we talked about when we were.
Is there two in that first cycle?
So there is the competitive grants and, the capital investment grants. And then special projects will come in later. I think they're due usually in May.
Mid-May.
So I just wanted to flag that for folks who are listening, who may be wanting to apply for a grant from the county. That will be open shortly. So be looking for that. We'll have notices in the paper. The applications are going to continue to be housed on the treasurer's website or off the treasurer's webpage, just because people may have had that bookmarked and we don't want them not being able to find it in the website. So that's where it will be. And I will be the contact until we have county court staff in place, and then we'll make that transition over. Those are my announcements. Sherry, what do you got going on?
We did have a special meeting for Norcor to talk about the bylaw changes. We also were discussing the job descriptions for the new management structure and the changes that would be happening there, and actually approving the new structure. We chose, because we weren't quite ready on those last two things, we chose to work some more on that, which staff has been doing along with the council. And we will take that up again at our regular meeting we're just in February, on the 17th. So we're working towards that. And also the Norcor budget task force that we have put together is working with legal counsel, and they've started to make some progress in what they think that we were asking them to do. And so they're moving forward as well. I missed Capco because I had something come up the other day. So I'll be doing that again in February. I did miss the January meeting, unfortunately. And I guess that's about it for now. And I have been coming into the courthouse at least once a week. I'll be back tomorrow, and then I will be coming once or twice a week as things progress.
Sounds good. What do you got going on, Pat?
Well, the legislative session started yesterday, and so Eastern Oregon County Caucus has kicked off again, having some calls there. It actually been a couple calls, and was on a Zoom meeting with EOCA this week, and Representative Drazen gave a little presentation in her run for governor, and also Betsy Johnson, who's running as an independent, which was really interesting, and just flagging for the community so that they're aware of it. Ag overtime is going to be a big deal in this session. Looks like it's something that can't be stopped. If you've got some interest or want comments on it, get involved. A number of other things, but I think it sounds like it's not going to be a real tough legislative session, but that one's out there, and it looks like it's through Boley. It's going to be a pill we're going to have to swallow.
Oh, it's a short session.
Okay, for me, wanted to just update you that MCED is continuing to have discussions about us joining their group. Their task force met on the 21st of January, and I sat in on that. My takeaway from watching is that their concern is not so much us and providing service to us. It is making sure that the balance between their Oregon and Washington partners is maintained within the services that they provide. I think the Washington counties, from listening to them, I think they maybe feel like they are the little fish in that pond and that they would like to see additional services. They're talking, their feedback was that, in essence, Salem cares a lot more about the gorge than Olympia does. And so they wanted MCHED to be more involved with the Washington counties and to be providing services. And so I didn't get a sense from the way that they were discussing that they had any actual concerns with us joining. But part of allowing us at the table, the Washington counties want to make sure that they are getting services and being heard. And I think they're taking the opportunity, since they're talking about expanding the borders, to sort of pair those two together, if that makes sense. So they are going to be going to the board in March, I think is the next MCHED board meeting, to get further instruction from the board on what they want to see. There's additional information they want regarding us joining. And so I'm hoping in March I'll have more of a what's coming next once I understand where their board is coming from. They did say in terms of timing that they thought if they were going to add us, that it likely would not occur until the fall timeframe in terms of actually getting the documents and everything together. So, but just wanted to let you know that that discussion is continuing and looks so far like pretty promising. The other thing, the Frontier Telenet board met on the 21st as well. I just want to flag this for you. This continues to be a source of frustration for me, and I think probably for Sheriff Betancourt if he was here. I don't want to speak too much for him, but I would say he, sitting as the Frontier 911 chair, I think has some frustrations that the right and the left hand don't know what each other is doing, and that Frontier 911 is being billed for things that they don't necessarily feel they should be billed for. There's just a breakdown and disconnect between how all of this is going to work. And so I continue to push on both sides, both boards that I sit on, that maybe looking at combining them into one entity might make some sense. The other thing that I just want to put on this table for us, so this is not a surprise, is that we may also need to explore whether the Frontier Telenet partnership makes sense for us to continue to be part of. Not that we wouldn't still have a network, but whether we want to look at taking back our towers and maintaining them ourselves and finding a different way of managing them than through the board.
I mean, as far as the assets, the county own?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a frustration. Well, I mean, I think, at least from what I see, the frustration that I have is that there are assets that are essential to our emergency managers here in Gilliam County that I can be outvoted on in terms of how they're managed, how much we spend on them, things like that. A good example is the Roosevelt Tower. If that had been a county project, Sherry remembers this, we started talking about this, I think the first year we took office, it took Frontier Telenet years to get that done. If that had been a county managed project, we would have had that done in a couple of months. So just as one example, it's like crucial infrastructure that we were regularly getting emails that the radios weren't working in the north part of the county because the Roosevelt Tower was down. And there was nothing that we could do from the county perspective to improve that service because it was a Frontier Telenet board decision. And so that is just one of many examples that I have, and I'm sure Gary has even more, and Chris has probably tons from their years of dealing with it, that it may make sense that we continue to be a partner in terms of carrying traffic, interoperability, all of those kinds of things, but whether the management jointly makes sense, I think it might be worth exploring whether that is still the right, right way to structure it. We've just seen some things that maybe are not ideal. And it is frustrating, I will say, as a board member, to be outvoted on things that matter to this county, and have two other counties sort of dictating some of those decisions. So I will stop there, but I will say that that is an internal discussion that is happening amongst some of us who are watching this entity in particular. So let me see what else I've got going on. AOC stuff because of the legislature being in session, lots of OHA meetings, as you might expect. Let me see what else. Oh, one thing I wanted to just raise, and I may have more for you guys later. So the city of Condon met for their goal setting annual thing that they do every January, February. One of the suggestions that came up for the empty lot that we have now behind the library, the Holland and Sons site, is whether we want to look at electric vehicle charging stations, fast ones. And so Catherine and I have been kicking around the idea of what if we took half of that and maybe did sort of a park art installation, picnic tables for somebody, and then the other half was parking and then that way some of if anybody's coming, say, to the hotel with an electric vehicle, they would have a charging station. It would also allow folks who are parking there to have easy access to go downtown and eat lunch or, whatever. So we've kind of been kicking around that as a potential idea for developing.
Has Catherine looked into funding along those lines at all? I've got the city of Arlington working on that too. And obviously, we're in the environment that something should be able to happen pretty easily with that.
I think so.
Yeah, we reached out to Nate Stice to see if there was any state funds, and he connected us with, I think her name is Martha from McKed, that does energy work for McKed, and she gave us a list of potential things that we could explore, but nothing concrete at this point. So we've just sort of been kicking around the idea. We haven't gotten very far, but I just wanted to flag that as something that, maybe an idea for use of that Holland and Sons.
Yeah,
property.
It's just prime time to try to make something like that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Better now than
my
later.
brother was stranded in Arlington and the galley was going to Hermiston to the bus training.
Oh,
And she went to charge her car in Arlington, and a little single charger down there
That
was
one
not working. And she
didn't
got to
work.
tow her car to Condon
Oh, no.
to where there is only one slow
Right.
charge system in Condon.
Yeah.
So it's
no, we've got to come
problem.
into the real world.
that,
Yeah.
we're in a changing place and
Yeah.
we don't have the stuff there to deal with it.
Mhm.
I think that's a great idea.
So I may just touch base with Jeff Schott and see what that would look like to do, because we still need to replace the sidewalk
Right.
as part of that. That was our agreement with the city. So the sidewalk is really rough. That's what precipitated this whole thing, actually, was the sidewalk. So to see what that might look like. The other just other projects that I'm working on, in addition to public health and housing and fiber and childcare and getting new staff. Catherine and the city is still moving forward with what to do with the old grade school building. And so if you recall, when AOC County Solutions was here, they talked about Project Turnkey. So I reached out to AOC and said, could Project Turnkey work for an old school building?
Mm-hmm.
He said that they are going to the legislature this session to ask for more money for Project Turnkey and to see if they maybe can expand the eligibility criteria. And so I flagged this as a potential thing that we might want to do, where we could look at potentially partnering with the city to make temporary housing out of probably the wings realistically of the old school and use Project Turnkey dollars to do that. So I just wanted to flag that we're having that discussion as well. And let me see, I think, let me think of what else I've got going on. I'm still working with the state on getting our permit reinstated for the Shelter Station well. That is still in process. The state came back with a question that I can't interpret. So I need to circle back with the water master and have him walk me through what I actually need to be getting to the state. So I'm hoping that we can get that reinstated shortly. And I think that is it. Those are the big things right now. Anything else you guys have questions, concerns about?
I don't think so.
All right, it is 11:33 and I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.